Hi, and welcome to our presentation for transitioning to college for students with disabilities. My name is Shelley Sinclair. I'm the coordinator of accessibility services here at the college, and I also work as an accessibility counselor. My colleague here, Julie Knights-Thompson, is also an accessibility counselor here at the college, and we're very excited today to present some information to you to help you decide on whether making the transition to college is the right choice for you or not. So really the goal of today is to present some information to you around what's available at the college for students who have documented disabilities. There is lots of support, accommodations, and academic guidance that can be provided to you throughout Fanshawe, and we're here today to talk to you about what's available through the Counselling and Accessibility Office. So let's get started. Fanshawe College is a large college. We're one of the top largest in the province. So last year, just to provide some stats, last year we had about 43,000 full-time students, and that is at our London campus as well as our regional campuses. So we have campuses in St. Thomas, Woodstock, some satellite campuses in Clinton. So we're quite a large entity, which is excellent. We're really proud of our numbers and the type of services that are available to students that do come to the college, regardless of what regional campus you attend. Within the Counselling and Accessibility Office, as I said, Julie and I and the other accessibility counselors work with students who have a documented disability. So our office is a really vibrant and growing place. Last year, we had just under 3,700 students register with our services for academic support and accommodations. So yeah, we have a really great office and we have a lot to offer. We have about 12 to 14 accessibility counselors here that work with any student registered with the college who qualifies for our services. And again, just to reiterate, those accommodations are available at all campuses, regardless of what campus you end up attending. I really like to show this slide because it really speaks to our growth. So if you can refer to the slide, if you look about 10 years ago, our office, the Accessibility Office, had just over 1,000 students registered with us. So you fast forward 9 or 10 years to last year, and as I said, we're around 3,700 students. So you can see from this chart that the numbers of students that register with our office continues to grow every year. So what that means for us, and what's really exciting for Julie and I and our colleagues, is that means that more students with disabilities are coming to college, graduating, being successful, and we're just really proud of those numbers and feel that that's a really positive step forward. So that just shows a little bit about our history. So you may be thinking as I'm talking, well, what is she talking about? What's a documented disability? What is a disability? What would qualify me for service? Which is a really good question. A lot of students come to college and don't really recognize that they may actually be eligible for some services, accommodations, and support. So we have a broad range of what is considered a disability. In reference to the chart or the slide that we're going to put up here, you can see we have a list here of some of the more common disabilities. So anyone who has an acquired brain injury or post-concussion syndrome would qualify for accommodations through our office. Anyone who has autism spectrum disorder or ASD certainly would qualify. ADD or ADHD, attention deficit disorder, any type of chronic illness or medical condition that's going to impact your ability to function in the classroom or impact your ability for taking tests, anything of that nature qualifies. So students who have, maybe are going through treatment for cancer or who have diabetes or lupus, any type of medical condition would qualify. Students that are deaf or hard of hearing certainly qualify for our services. Students who have learning disabilities diagnosed, low vision or students who are blind, and also students with any type of mental health diagnosis. So this is one where people often don't realize they qualify for service, but students who perhaps have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, any type of mental health condition can certainly register and seek out support through our office. A mobility issue, so we work with students who have mobility issues or physical limitations of any kind. And then we have another category at the end called other. So students who have a communication disorder, a mild intellectual disability. So really the purpose of this slide is if you feel like you may qualify, come to our office, seek out some help, and we can certainly help direct you and let you know what is available to you. Okay? So we're very inclusive in our office. This is another slide I like to show in terms of the types of disabilities and how that's changed over the years. So when I started working here just over 10 years ago, certainly over 50% of the students that our office served were students with learning disabilities. And we're really great at accommodating students with learning disabilities. That's been something that the college has worked on for years. And that really represented a significant portion of the students we serve. That's changed over the years, and it was a few years ago for the first time that that group of students who had learning disabilities was actually eclipsed by students with mental health conditions, or what is referred to by the ministry as psychiatric conditions. So what that means is more than 50% of the students we serve currently in 2017, 18, and 19 have mental health diagnoses. So as I said, some people don't realize that that qualifies you for service. It certainly does. We're very open and skilled at providing supports and accommodations for people with any type of disability. But you can see that makes up our largest group. Second to that is still students with learning disabilities. And then it goes down the list for attention deficit disorder, medical, and so on. So that just kind of gives you a breakdown. We also have students with multiple disabilities, so certainly come forward. If you have one or two conditions, that is no issue at all. We can provide multiple accommodations. One thing that Julie and I really like to reiterate or introduce, I should say, to people, students that are coming directly from high school, there are many differences in how our system works as opposed to how the high school system works, the secondary system. So this is a really good slide to provide information to students, but as well to parents, because there are some real differences in how our systems function. So for example, when you're at secondary school or high school, they're governed by the Ministry of Education. So their policies are quite different than ours. We here at the college in post-secondary are governed by the human rights. So, it's our duty to accommodate students with disabilities, and we have a different legislation and guidelines that we follow, and we're overseen by a different ministry. When you're in secondary school, you are really considered part of there's a team supporting you, and it's very child-centered. So, parents are often involved, teachers will be calling the home at times. There's a lot of focus on resource and support. When you come to post-secondary, even if you're 17 years old, our system views you as an adult, so it's very adult-centered. So if I have a student register with me and their parents are very used to being involved and want to continue to be involved in the education, the student actually has to sign a consent to allow that to happen. So those are just some changes, some differences between the system that are good to be aware of. In secondary school, students with disabilities are referred to as having an exceptionality. And they often have what's called an IEP, an individualized education plan. Our language is very different, again, because we're governed by two different ministries. So you've heard me say documented disability multiple times already. So we don't refer to exceptionalities. Here we refer to documented disabilities. And we don't have what's formally called an IEP. Here we would create what's called an accommodation form. So just some differences to be aware of. Again, at high school, they have all your information and all your files and your assessments in your Ontario School Record, your OSR. None of that gets forwarded to the college or university that you will be attending. So you're responsible for getting all your documents together, if you have any, and registering with our office and submitting that information to us. So there isn't a flow through, which some people think that there might be. So that's good to know. Another really key point to make is that here at post-secondary, We see accommodations as scaffolds to success, and they really help students to show what they know and what they've mastered. But we don't in any way modify course learning objectives or outcomes. So students still have to demonstrate that they have mastered the content and met the learning outcomes. And we do that by putting accommodations in place, but we don't modify any curriculum. So that's another key piece that at times is different for students that are coming from secondary school. Okay, also at the college, one thing to note is we have multiple programs and lots of teaching faculty that are experts in their field. So some professors will be full-time, some will be part-time. So there's a real range as opposed to secondary school where, you know, your teacher is your teacher for the year. So just some differences to be aware of. So I've talked a lot about, you know, who would qualify for service, accommodations and support can be provided. And the question often arises, well, how do we register or how does that happen? So what we require is documentation of a documented disability in order to open the door for the accommodations and working with accessibility counselors. So what we accept, if you are a student who is applying for OSAP, so the Ontario Student Assistance Program, on your OSAP application, there will be something called a disability verification form. You can download that, print the disability verification form, and you would have your physician, your doctor complete that and submit that to the financial aid office. That then gets forwarded to us, and that's all the documentation we need. So the disability verification form is key for students applying for OSAP. If a student has a learning disability, then similarly, they can have their psychologist that did the assessment fill out that form for them. And they can also submit a copy of their psych ed assessment to our office directly. That information is often very helpful. Now, if you're a student who is not applying for OSAP at all, then you don't have to worry about that disability verification form. There is a form available on our website called the Confidential Disability Information Form, and you can download that right from our website. Again, have your medical doctor complete that and submit it directly to our office. So there's sort of two streams. For those who are applying for OSAP, you want to go with the ministry's form, the disability verification form from your OSAP application. For those that are not applying for OSAP, go to our website, which will be provided at the end of this presentation, and you will download the Confidential Disability Information Form. Have that completed and return to our office. Okay. And also of note, we accommodate for permanent disabilities, but also students who have temporary disabilities can register with us and get support and accommodations. And those who have what we refer to as interim accommodations are also available. So if you maybe don't have a diagnosis, but are in the process of getting a diagnosis or are experiencing some, a health condition or a mental health condition that's impacting your ability in the class, come to our office, talk to us, and we can look into what's available. Okay? So what is an accommodation at college? We offer a broad range of accommodations that are really tailored to the individual student and what their needs are based on their information, their documentation, and what program they're going into. So that's where you'll work with your accessibility counselor to figure out what accommodations are right for you. So on this slide here, I have a list of possible accommodations just to run through for you. So across from our office, we have an excellent test center. So it's called the Accessibility Test Center. Students who need extra time on tests or adaptive technology or different types of support when writing tests can have access to our test center. It's an excellent resource and it's highly utilized by our students. So that's a very common accommodation. Students that have permanent disabilities have the option of going on what we call a reduced course load or going on a part-time basis. So perhaps your program is 2 years with 8 courses per term. If that's a little bit too much for you and you would be successful moving through with maybe 5 courses, but taking a little bit longer to complete the program, that's something you can work with us with as well as your program coordinators. So that's an option as well, going on a reduced course load. And there's a tuition cap associated with that so that you're not charged extra if it takes you longer to complete your program. Again, your accessibility counselor can review those options with you. We have peer services, so we have peer note-taking. If note-taking is challenging for you, we have a system where we can request a peer note-taker to provide notes to you anonymously to supplement your learning and help with your studying. There's individual classroom accommodations that are available. So, if you, for attention reasons, need to sit at the front of the class, that can be arranged. If you need to have food and drink in the class for a medical condition, that can be arranged. If you have a mobility issue and may be late for class, those are all types of things that we can set in place with your professor. Books are available in alternate format for those who require alternate format to access content. We have special furniture, adjustable chairs, ergonomic chairs, or adjustable desks, ergonomic chairs for those who may suffer from pain or chronic pain injuries or illnesses. We have a wellness room on the London campus for those who may be on the spectrum or, again, have chronic pain issues and just need a quiet place to relax during the day. That's available. We have American Sign Language interpreters that we contract for our students who are deaf, and we have specialized services for those who qualify. So those are some of the general accommodations that can be provided. In addition to that, for any student at the college, our office offers counseling services. So certainly students can meet with their accessibility counselor. The other half of our office are personal counselors. So that's available to any student at the college that might need some support for personal reasons, adjustment to college. We have the ability to do psychoeducational assessments for students who have outdated learning assessments or maybe suspect they have a learning disability but have never been formally diagnosed. You can talk to your accessibility counselor about that particular option and if it's appropriate. We have lots of individual groups and we have individual services. So you can meet with a learning strategist if you have a learning disability and figure out what's the best way for you to learn and study. But we also have lots of group learning available. So we have sessions for students that may require memory aids on how to create those. We run groups for students with ASD. We run a group for students with ADHD. So lots of awesome opportunities to get involved. And we also have an accessibility services lab. So there's a computer lab that is available only to those 3,700 students registered with accessibility services, and all the computers are loaded with adaptive technology. It's a bit of a quieter lab, so a lot of students like to go there and do their homework and study or meet with their peer tutors if they have one. And we also do personal emergency plans for students who have medical conditions that might require having extra support. So an example would be perhaps a student who has epilepsy would meet with their counselor as well as our emergency response officer and develop a plan. So if a seizure happens, what are the steps that we're going to take? So those are available through our office as well. I briefly mentioned specialized services may be available, which sounds great, but there are some funding opportunities and some funding requirements to access those specialized services. So I'm going to pass it over to Julie now, who's going to give you some information about finances for students with disabilities. Okay. You're welcome. That's great. Thank you, Shelley. So we do often hear from students and families, all of this sounds fantastic, but how do we pay? How do we pay for these items that Shelley has reviewed, some of the specialized services or even the accommodations? So the first thing we want to make sure that we emphasize to our audience is that you do not have to pay for accommodations. Accommodations are free. Accommodations are set up with our office, and we create those accommodations, as Shelley has already mentioned, in conjunction with you, the student, and in looking at your documentation. So there's no charge for accommodations, but there may be some other services or equipment that you as a student would benefit from having, and that equipment is related to your disability. And so we want to make sure that you have information about the best possible way to get funding for that equipment. We always encourage students and families to attempt to apply for OSAP, so the Ontario Student Assistance Program. Sometimes families will say to us, I don't think I'll qualify. I'm not sure based on income if we're going to be eligible for OSAP. And we really want to encourage you to try to try to apply for OSAP, because that application to OSAP as a student with a disability is potentially going to open up for you some grants, some disability-related grants, as well as something called the Bursary for Students with Disabilities. Sometimes we refer to that as the BSWD. We can use that BSWD funding with students to pay for specialized services. So an example of that might be that you're a student who would benefit from having an academic strategist or an organizational coach, and that's a specialized service. We could potentially use the Bursary for Students with Disabilities to pay for that funded position and somebody to work with you in terms of organization. Or it might be that you're a student that requires some specialized adaptive technology like Kurzweil or Dragon. And so we can use, again, the Bursary for Students with Disabilities to potentially pay for that technology, as well as in some instances we're able to use the bursary to purchase a laptop to be able to run that adaptive technology. So there's some really great uses with the Bursary for Students with Disabilities, and we really do encourage that you apply for OSAP in order to find out if you will be eligible. One of the things we want to make sure that you know too, if we use the Bursary for Students with Disabilities to purchase equipment or adaptive software, that's then yours to keep as a student. So that's one difference from when you were in secondary school and you may have had a funded laptop. Here in post-secondary, if we use the bursary to purchase you a laptop, that laptop is yours. We also want to make sure families are aware that there may be times where you have to put some money towards the funded equipment. So the bursary will allow for certain amounts to be spent on certain pieces of equipment. Okay? So how do you become eligible for the Bursary for Students with Disabilities? Well, the first thing, as I said already, is that you've got to try to apply for OSAP. And even if you're eligible for $1 of OSAP and you're a student with a permanent disability, that then opens up that bursary for us to be able to use for funding services and equipment. So you're going to want to make sure that you indicate on your OSAP application that you're a student with a permanent disability. And then, as Shelley mentioned earlier, when you do that, you're going to have to complete that OSAP disability verification form. That's a form that your physician or a clinician is going to complete for you, and you're going to submit to the financial aid office. And then we'll be able to use the bursary. Another thing that I think sometimes families don't know is that if you qualify for OSAP, you might feel like you don't want to have a big loan to pay back at the end of your student experience, and you don't want your student to have debt at the end of their educational experience. But what you can do is you can actually decline the loan portion of your OSAP funding and just use the disability grant that you get to pay for items and to pay for schooling. So there's some really good options available to families. One of the things we want to make sure that everybody is aware of, again, is that the documentation requirements for applying for OSAP are stricter than the documentation requirements that we have in our office if you're just coming to us to set up accommodations. So if you're applying for OSAP, you're going to have to get that OSAP disability verification form filled out by a physician, and you're going to need to submit that form. It may be that you have old documentation and that you require something more updated to fulfill the requirements of OSAP and financial aid. And so again, we can help in our office to get updated assessments taken care of. We can work with you pretty closely to sort of help you in securing the documentation that you require in order to be registered with our office, as well as to be to satisfy the needs of financial aid. Okay. So all of this information, and you're probably thinking, where do I start? What's next? So We really love that you're here, and we always love when folks come out to presentations to find out more about the transition to post-secondary, and starting early is always fantastic, and it's great that you're here getting this information. You'll find that there's lots of information available on our website, so we encourage people to continue to look at program-specific information, to ask questions. We have an advising center, and we have staff available to families and to students, so that if you have questions about the application process, if you have questions about a specific program and whether or not maybe you have the prerequisites, to get into that program, you can certainly ask the staff in the advising center. It's also great if you are able to connect directly with program coordinators. So don't hesitate if you have your eye on a particular program and you know already that that's your area of interest and your industry of interest. You can contact the program coordinator and meet with them individually to find out more specific information about that program before you even get into the program. The other thing you can do, again, attending open house, and we have them every year in both March and November. There's lots of great information as well as enthusiasm at open house. It's a great opportunity for you as a student and your family to tour the campus, to see the facilities and services that we have here on campus. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk directly with both current students as well as faculty, and to start to gain some of that Fanshawe spirit and excitement. The other thing that you can do is you can book a pre-admission appointment with our office. So if you have specific questions about what your involvement with our department is going to be and how to get involved with an accessibility counselor and how to register, we encourage you to contact our office, and we've got some contact information that we'll share with you at the end. Please feel free to come in and book what's called a pre-admission appointment. Okay, so the last information that we really want to share with you are what we call our sort of top 10 steps to success for you as a future potential student here at Fanshawe. So the very first thing you're going to do, obviously, is you're going to apply to college. You're going to do that through the Ontario College's website, and that is a very exciting time for families, as well as when you get offers of acceptance and you accept your offer of acceptance. So that's step number one. The next thing that we're going to ask you to do is to assemble your documentation. So make sure that a lot of students before they even graduate high school will make sure that they have copies of their IEPs, their IPRC statements, any documentation that you think is going to be helpful for you moving forward and getting registered with us is very important. And oftentimes resource departments in high schools will have that information ready to go for you in a package so that you've got sort of that package ready, and the transition to us is a seamless thing. You're going to want to contact our office, and we've put a website up for you to do what's called the early ID process. So as Shelley mentioned earlier, we are adult-centered here at the college. We are not going to recruit you, and we're not going to come and find you. We really encourage you and want you to come and find us. So it's up to you to register with our office, and you're going to do that through the early ID process. So if you go on the website that we've got listed on this slide, you will be able to complete the early ID. That then triggers for us in our department that you are a student who's wanting to register with an accessibility counselor and with our services, and we will then contact you back to let you know that you're officially registered, and we'll give you next steps in terms of what you need to do as a student. We want you to do that early, by the way, so please don't wait until late summer or even in the fall. We really encourage families and students to do that early ID process in June before a September start. The next thing that you will do, and you'll get invited to by email, is to come in for an orientation session to Accessibility Services as a whole. So you'll have a chance to come in and see our office. You'll have the opportunity to meet some of our great staff. You'll hear lots about what's going to be available to you potentially as a student registered with Counselling and Accessibility, and a lot of the same information that you heard today in this presentation, but it never hurts to have those reminders. you're going to have the chance then to book an appointment with your assigned accessibility counselor. So that's someone like me, that's someone like Shelley. We'll be able to sit with you and start to set up your accommodations. At that meeting, you're going to hear, number 6 on our list is finding out about different events that are going to be available for you. And we have a number of events that happen through this summer before you start with us in September. So there's a program called Head Start. We run a program called Fast Forward to Fanshawe. There's also going to be your specific program orientation in September. Those are all really wonderful opportunities for you to, again, come on campus, have a chance to meet with different personnel here at Fanshawe College to start to build your enthusiasm for being a Fanshawe student and to ask any questions that you might have about your time here as a student. When you meet with your accessibility counselor, again, we're going to review your documentation. We're going to talk about your learning needs as a student, and we're going to talk to you about what is going to be helpful to make you the most successful student that you can be in your classes, when you write tests and exams, and when you are potentially going out on a co-op or a field placement opportunity. And we're going to create an accommodation form or letter for you in that appointment that we will then send out to your faculty. So your faculty will have some information about you in a form, in a letter, and that goes out to your professors at the beginning of every term. That's our responsibility as a department, and your accessibility counselor is the one who will send that letter out to each of your professors at the beginning of every term. That letter does not have information about your specific diagnosis. It doesn't share anything confidential in nature. It is truly a list of here's what the student is going to need for when they write tests, here's what they're going to need, and here's what best supports them in the classroom, and here are some potential supports that they will need when they're out on co-op or field placement. Okay, and then I think the final thing that we want to make sure that every student understands and knows is that we want you to stay connected to us. So you will have an assigned accessibility counselor who you can meet with. You can book appointments with as needed. So anytime anything comes up, if you have concerns about your accommodations, if you feel that perhaps your accommodations aren't being fully met, we are available to students, and we really, really want to emphasize again that this is adult driven. So you as a student are encouraged to connect in with us whenever you need to see us. So we aren't necessarily going to know how things are going. We're not going to be getting regular updates on how things are going for you. We're going to need you to contact us as needed. There are lots of fantastic supports and people on this campus, and you're going to be, I think, excited to see all that Fanshawe has to offer, and it's going to be up to you to sort of choose what you want to connect with and get involved in, okay? So I think that is sort of a summary now of the information that we wanted to make sure that you had from our Counseling and Accessibility team. We've got a great team of people that we work with on a day in and day out basis, and we're available to answer any questions that you have. So we've given you here some information of how to contact us. We're located in F building in room 2010, and we look forward to working with you in the future, and we're excited to see you here as a Fanshawe Falcon. Thank you so much.